The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Rieger getting traded to Minnesota changes nothing.
6'4" guys running 4.4s. These guys don't grow on trees. And a lot of times I'm willing to bet on, especially long term, on the freak athlete.
You don't ever want to overreact to what guys look like in preseason. There's been a ton of preseason all-stars that never make rosters or never pan out. There's the whistle. Good morning, Belly Up Fantasy Live. How are we all doing this morning? I am Chase Thornton coming to you from the Mott and Bailey Basin Bar. This is Belly Up Fantasy Live. With me, as per usual, is Kevin Wilson down there. It's ready to go. There's a lot of stuff to talk about in the sports world. We were just bringing it up.
Oh yeah, so I missed out the last couple weeks, so I'm glad to be back. Worked 2 weeks ago, and then last Sunday was my wife's birthday, and I have to say she really got a kick out of you giving her that shout out at the beginning of the show last week. She really liked that a lot.
Well, good. Hey, you got to do something for 29th birthday. So
right.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Excellent. No, welcome back. No, it's good to have you back. Good to see everybody. A lot going on in the sports world this week. I mean, like we just said, we've got, obviously the NCAA tournaments are going on right now. Up in my neck of the woods, we're even paying attention to the women's hockey tournament because the Badgers will be playing today against the Badger women's hockey team. They came from behind, beat our big rivals, Minnesota, to make it to the championship game against Ohio State today. So that'll be fun. We got obviously our neck of the woods, our other neck of the woods. WBC's going on right now. U.S. with a big win last night, big come from behind win last night.
A grand slam by Mr. Trey Turner. So
it was just a good game. That was a good game.
Both
teams had a 4-run inning. It was 3-2 after the first inning. That was a good game. That was a good game. Nobody blew their knee out celebrating afterwards, which is awesome.
Right. And March Madness is underway. We've had some big upsets already.
Fully mad, yeah.
Yeah, Kansas, the defending champion, down already.
Out.
Purdue, which I'd rather not even discuss that.
Yeah.
As I was, as I was telling you, I grew up in Indiana, so I was like, all right, Purdue. Well, it's all wrong, Purdue.
Well, and I'm a Wisconsin fan, so yeah, Purdue basketball is on my short list of hated programs anyway. But in the last 3 years now, you've lost to a 13, a 15, and a 16. Just go away.
Yeah, and I know this is a football show, but that game to me showed exactly what's wrong with basketball today, because Purdue was one of the tallest teams in the tournament, and
Zach Edey is the tallest player in Big Ten history,
and they didn't throw it inside. They kept shooting threes, and they were like 6 for 27 or something crazy. And so Matt Painter, their coach, might want to think about some other line of employment to me, because that loss is on him.
Zach Edey is the 7'4", tallest player in Big Ten history, National Player of the Year on several lists, and Big Ten Player of the Year. Didn't have a shot attempt in the last 12 minutes.
Don't understand. Get it to him. They couldn't stop him. You put the shot up. If it goes in, great. If it doesn't, he got fouled. So
well, like you said, FDU is literally the shortest team in Division I college basketball.
Their team averages 6'3".
Yeah,
going up against Edey, who's I don't even know how tall he is.
7'4".
7'4". Holy mackerel!
Tallest player in Big Ten history.
So that was a mismatch that he should have had like 42 points.
Right. And on top of all that, we've got NFL free agency going on, which is going to be the topic of today's show. But we'll start things off as we talked about right before we came on here. The Aaron Rodgers situation is near and dear to my heart, and it kind of is overshadowing a lot of the other things going on between Rodgers and the Willie won't he end up traded, which it looks like he will, but. Between that and Lamar Jackson's situation, we've actually got several teams in the NFL. It seemed like they're kind of on hold, just waiting for those two things to shake out. And yeah, obviously we had Rodgers come on the Pat McAfee show last week, and it wasn't his decision. He wasn't announcing his decision. He was just clearing up what his decision was, that no one else in the world knew what his decision was going to be. So he wasn't announcing his decision. He was just clarifying what decision he had already made that no one else knew about. Okay. He's a little more philosophical
so him
than I am.
and Pat McAfee, I'd like to know the secret sauce that the two of them share or something, because that's where he goes to put out these little tidbits. And
yep.
So
did you see the tweet that he sent, or the text reply that he sent to Adam Schefter though? Somehow Adam Schefter,
yes. And
lose number. Nice try though.
Yeah, that whole I know this is your neck of the woods and all that, but I have to think that the Packers are absolutely fed up to here with Aaron Rodgers, and they couldn't do anything because he was defending NFL MVP and everything else, but he did not play well last year. The Packers did not play well, and so let's get a deal done.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And it doesn't help that he goes on that show and announces his intention to play for the Jets, which means that they're the only one in the fight.
Now they're locked.
So they're not going to negotiate against themselves. And so, and I was just reading that if they made this trade, after June 1st?
Yeah.
Then that helps the Packers.
Saves them tremendously. Saves a ton.
Yeah, their cap space and everything else. But do they actually want to do that? Because then they get no trade. If they do it before the trade, at least they get something for him.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of timing issues. There's no deadline that they have to do this move by because of the structure of his contract. They don't have to pay anything out or what until like week 1 of the season. So it's not like one of those kinds of things where there's a roster bonus due on May 1st that's worth half the GNP of a small European nation.
Right.
But like you said, the whole point of this is to get something back for him. And if you're going to get draft picks back, especially as high as it's rumored the Packers are looking, you'd prefer to get it this year. You'd prefer to get that for this season. But we're coming up on that
for him, and that's not going to happen.
No, that June 1st, June 1st date,
giving them 2 firsts. Right?
Yeah, no, that's not happening. I in my wildest,
if he was 29,
most optimistic dreams, that wouldn't happen. Right. I think, hey, if you can get them to send you a this year's second, you're not getting this year's first because they picked two picks before you do. You'd end up with a 13th and 15th picks which would be huge, would be awesome for me. Ain't gonna happen in a realistic world. But if you get them to say maybe give you this year's second and maybe a conditional first for next year, if they did this with Favre when they traded Favre to the same damn team 15 years ago or whatever it was. It was a conditional pick that they traded that could escalate up to, I believe, a first rounder, ended up a third rounder. But yeah, it was all if he plays so many games and if they make the playoffs and if they win the championship. We see those kinds of trades all the time. All those kinds of escalators for compensation. If you can get them to agree to something like that where it becomes almost likely that you get a first next year. Yeah. Hey, if he's on that team, and if he can put it together and get his timing down, which is a whole other conversation we won't talk about.
The other thing I don't understand, because last year he was all like, well, these are new wide receivers and I'm not used to them and everything else. With them. And so the Jets go out and get the same wide receiver. So that makes no sense, whatever, to me. And all wide receivers are all packing to go east to New York now, and Lazard and all that. But he wasn't happy with his wide receiver. So that if someone could explain that to me, I would be.
Yeah, I don't have enough weapons. Trade me away. Oh, by the way, new team, bring me all the weapons I just had that weren't enough, but they're my buddies.
Yeah, because this is going to happen at some point. So he goes to the Jets. Okay, so now even in his own division, you've got Allen over there, you got Tua over there, you've got in that conference, you got Patrick Mahomes, you've got Herbert,
Burrow, Lamar,
Burrow,
Herbert.
and it just goes on and on. So even if they make this move, when they make it, does not mean the Jets are all of a sudden going to be kings of the AFC.
No, not at all. They've got a great young nucleus. They seem to be, I mean, it's the most important position in pro sports
Right.
period. They
Well, I don't
seem
know
to be a
about that.
quarterback
I think
away from being real contenders.
Goalie in the NHL is the most important position in sport. That's my personal opinion.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting debate. We could have a different time, but
Right.
But
yeah, in this
either
case,
way, they look like they're a quarterback away from being real contenders. Criminies, they almost made it last
right.
year.
Well,
without
being a real
one.
contender means you win 10 games,
Right,
maybe a 9.
right.
So, are we talking about being a contender? Or are we talking about a team who legitimately has a chance to play in the AFC title game?
Right.
Right. Or further.
Here's
that-
my final coda on the whole thing, and from a Packer fan standpoint, because if we hadn't gone through the Favre thing starting 20 years ago and ending finally 15 or whatever when they finally traded him, this would still be annoying. But having been through it twice now, it's like,
Right.
even
It's
I am
super
ready to
annoying
move on.
because you got Aaron Rodgers that seems trying to undercut the Packers at every single move.
I've
and
made
they've
the
held
point-
him hostage for 3 years now, whatever it is.
Right.
And so
I've made the
Jordan-
point for a couple years here that, like, listen, we've been spoiled up here in Green Bay because we've had back-to-back
Right.
Hall of Fame quarterbacks. We've had Hall of Fame quarterback play for 30 years. There are Packer
since
fans who have never known anything
1994?
else.
wasn't it his first year, 1994?
Yeah, 92, I believe. Yeah.
92.
So, I mean, we've
Okay,
literally
even
had
further
3
back.
decades.
All right, so for the last 30 years,
Yes, of Hall of
two
Fame quarterback
Hall
play.
of Fame level quarterbacks.
And people
And
can
there's
complain
2
about all the
Super Bowl wins to show for it.
Yeah, no, well, but they have 2 Super Bowl wins. I'll take that.
Well,
I'll take that
right.
over what a lot of
Right.
other teams have. But
Absolutely.
we've been spoiled by that. Everybody says, "Oh, let him go, let him go, let him go." You don't just get that. You don't
Right.
always follow up Joe Montana with Steve Young. You don't always
No.
follow up Brett Favre with Aaron Rodgers. It just does not happen all the time. And
Right.
everybody, great. Hey, they see Jordan Love every day over there in the Packer front office. They do what they do. I do what I do. I talk about it on a
Right.
show about fake
If
football.
he was ready, this would have happened 2 years ago. If
But
he
I
was ready,
just-
this would have
man.
happened 2 years ago, despite the fact that
It sucks letting
was
go.
the NFL MVP.
It sucks letting go of a Hall of Famer. But at this point, I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm ready to be done with it. Ready to be done with it.
Right.
Bart Starr never did
you
that.
know,
So
Considering the fact he's 39,
yeah,
right?
oldest
So-
quarterback. Yep.
So and all this talk about that he said, oh, I was leaning towards retirement before he went into the dungeon of darkness or whatever.
Right.
I didn't buy that for one single second. He doesn't not want to go in the same NFL Hall of Fame class with
The
GOAT.
Tom Brady.
He
He
doesn't
doesn't
want
want to
that.
have to share that moment.
That was never going to happen. So he could spin that yarn from here to Timbuktu. I would never bought that. Never.
Yeah. Nope. I agree. I am ready to be done with it. I'm ready to move on. Actually, I'm ready to talk about some NFL free agency moves and let Aaron twist in the wind for a little while longer if we can. First off, let's listen to our first spot here from our good friends over at Rex MD. We come back on the other side. Let's dive into the AFC free agent moves and what really means something and what really necessarily doesn't mean anything. But first off, like we said, let's hear from our good friends over at Rex MD.
Fellas, do you sometimes need a little help in the bedroom? Valentine's Day is just around the corner, and our sponsors at RexMD are here to help you make this the best night of your life. Erectile dysfunction is a common medical issue that over 30 million men in the U.S. tackle every day. We've all had those nights where we get too nervous and just need a little help. The doctors at RexMD will evaluate you online. No office visit needed and ship medication directly to your door before the big day. With RexMD, they're here to help and provide you with real FDA-approved medications at the best price. Act now to take advantage of their Valentine's Day deal by heading to RexMD.com/bellyup. Our exclusive deal will save you up to 90% off, where you'll pay as low as $2 per dose on generic Viagra instead of $90+ on Viagra. That's RexMD/bellyup for 90% off. Your partner will thank you.
All right, so get yourself over there to RexMD.com. Use that promo code BELLYUP. Get yourself back in the game. All right, so yeah, let's move on here to the
Let's
AFC.
talk about them. Yeah, let's talk.
Some a little more positive.
It's too bad our good friend Andrew couldn't be with us today, because I would be really interested to hear what he has to say about what his team is doing up there in New England.
Big time. And let's start there in the AFC East, and let's start with New England there. A couple of big moves that they've made. Bringing in, just off the top of the off the top here, the big move, obviously, bringing in Juju Smith-Schuster, 3 years, $33 million, that which seems to be an $11 million annual average value, seems to be right now the market for the top wide receivers that are available out there.
Yeah.
It's the same thing that Myers signed for, essentially down in Los Angeles or Las Vegas. It's the same thing Lazard signed for in New York. But Juju Smith-Schuster to New England.
Yeah.
What do you make of that move?
Pretend that these guys are top level wide receivers.
No, but they're the top guys that are on the market right now.
Okay. And so when you talk about Smith-Schuster, right?
Mm-hmm.
You talk about James Robinson,
Mm-hmm.
and you talk about Mike Gesicki.
Mike Gesicki.
Okay. Now these moves do not, I don't need to be resuscitated, right? Because I went unconscious because of these moves right here.
Right.
Yeah. So but last year, if James Robinson was the subject, it would have been a lot bigger than it is this year, because he fell off the earth.
Right.
Right. Even when he went to the Jets after Travis Etienne took over and everything else, he went to the Jets. That fell through, and then they lost their Breece Hall. He still was,
it stayed the Michael Carter show. It was not,
right.
James Robinson did not move up.
You could use radar or sonar or whatever else. You weren't finding him. And so any of these three moves don't do anything to move the needle for me as far as the Patriots are.
Well, at first glance, that James Robinson move was a little bit of I was like, really?
Yeah,
but when you look more at it, you look more at it like you just said. He was an ascendant player a couple years ago, but the injury kind of derailed things for him. Travis Etienne coming back off of his injury and looking so good last year for them down in Jacksonville kind of took the shine off of James Robinson a little bit. The nice thing, at first I was worried. I was like, oh, great. Are we going back to, the Belichick shenanigans at running back, where we never know who's going to run the ball for them?
Running back is going to start from one series to the next.
I think they are. I think they're locked in on Stevenson, which is good from a fantasy standpoint. It's good to have that one guy that we know is going to be the dude, especially when it's a guy like Ramondre Stevenson, who already proved last year that he's a top 10 type running back for fantasy purposes. James Robinson has been that kind of guy in the past, but is not that kind of guy now. I think he steps more into the Damian Harris role, because obviously Damian Harris is on his way out the door. I'm not worried about that move from a fantasy standpoint. Mike Gesicki, I know they want two tight ends down there. They had two tight ends down there until they traded Jonnu Smith to Atlanta.
Yeah, and both of them, earlier, radar, where are they?
Mike Gesicki is not necessarily a tight end either. He's not.
Right. Yeah, he's down in Miami.
He's not a Rob Gronkowski type. The game. No, he's much more a very large and not quite as quick slot receiver, more so than a tight end. This is not, and Hunter Henry's good. Hunter Henry's a good player at tight end, and he's still he's the top tight end on their team now, still.
Obviously.
Yeah. But this is not a return to Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez. This is, I'm not a giant fan of the Gesicki move. The Juju move, I like it, but only from the standpoint of they lost their number one guy in Jacoby Myers and let him walk, but then they brought in Juju for the same money. And Smith-Schuster looked okay with Patrick Mahomes last year, but he looked okay with Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
And he's going to
If you
Mac
look
Jones now.
Right. I should catch 8 passes a game if Patrick Mahomes is my quarterback.
My biggest thing here in New England right now is that I think they will do much better with Bill O'Brien, who is an actual offensive coordinator type, calling the plays at offensive coordinator as opposed to Matt Patricia.
Excited about Bill O'Brien. He's not even a player.
They actually have an offensive coordinator now instead of 3 raccoons in a trench coat, like pretending to be offensive coordinators.
Right.
Well, yeah. I'm curious too to know what Duck thinks about that. But moving around the rest of the AFC East, Buffalo hasn't done a whole lot offensively.
Nope.
They've done mostly defensive moves, but again, I mean, they didn't really have a ton to do. They have maybe some work to do at running back after, it looks like they're going to let Devin Singletary walk in free agency here. James Cook doesn't necessarily look to me like a 3-down back, but the other team, and we talked about Allen Lazard going to New York. Listen, Allen Lazard, I think this is a nice move for Allen Lazard in terms of the idea that it puts him back at where he is naturally most helpful to a team as a number 2. I was big on Allen Lazard last year as a Packer fan, but also as a fantasy guy. He had his biggest year of his career. I just thought he would literally have twice what he did.
Right.
They didn't, but the whole team.
The biggest year of his career is, a number 2, 3 wide receiver.
He's a number 2. He's a very good receiver, leading all-time receiver in Iowa State University history. Listen, he's a good pro player. And if they get Rodgers, when they get Rodgers in, it's a guy that Rodgers trusts stepping off out of the taxi.
Right. But you want to make sure that does not take away from Garrett Wilson over there.
Exactly. And Garrett Wilson is a number 1.
A number 1 wide receiver.
Yes. Garrett Wilson is a number 1. Allen Lazard is a number 2 wide receiver.
Yeah. You might argue he's a 2B.
He can be, I think he's an underrated player in terms of what he does on the field, but after last season, I've come around to the idea that he maybe is one of those guys who I would like on my team if I were a real GM, not a fantasy GM.
Right. Fantasy, if he's your 3rd wide receiver on your team, then
great. Yeah, I jumped in way early on him last year, and I paid for it because the whole
someone's going to take him as the number 2 wide receiver, and that's too rich for my blood.
I think he is I would put him as a number 3 fantasy wide receiver right now with 2 upside. If Rodgers comes in,
if he's on your fantasy
if that
team,
offense takes a jump
leave
forward,
him there on your fantasy team.
Yeah.
So,
I'm not moving him in dynasty. I'm not jumping on him.
If someone buys him as a 2A wide receiver, maybe in dynasty, I could be talked into moving him.
Yeah, if I get the right offer, but you get the right offer for anybody. I'm saying I'm not bailing on him in dynasty, but I'm also not going to jump on him in redraft either, like I did last year.
Right.
But the other team in the East that's made a ton of moves here, and a ton of moves, but not a ton of earth-shattering moves. Miami, the Dolphins are going to bring back every running back that has ever played for the Dolphins, including all 4 of them, their 4 main guys last year. Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert, Salvon Ahmed, and Myles Gaskin are all coming back. Which
may be good for the team. That's terrible for fantasy.
That's where we're headed with this.
That's terrible.
I would love
because going into the draft, you don't know who, you don't know when, you don't know anything. So there will be no Miami running backs on my redraft team.
No, definitely not. We talked about James Robinson. Speaking of guys who played Florida running back in Florida 2 years ago and looked good. Myles Gaskin was a guy who had a couple of good years in a row for them.
2 years ago, I had him on my team.
And then he saved
popped
a
off
couple
for
of
like 20, whatever it was, fantasy points. He did that a couple of times and then turn right around and get you 3.
That first year of Myles Gaskin, though, like his emergence, he was in the running for like waiver pickup of the year kind of thing.
Yes,
like
right.
He really,
I got him off the waiver wire.
You got him for a song free off the waivers,
absolutely.
And he was a number 2 type, and some weeks.
So leave these guys on the waiver wire, and maybe after things get rolling, see what's what. Wilson,
had it come down to
can't be on someone's going to take him.
Yeah.
So that's not an option of waiting on him on the waiver.
Well, and Raheem Mostert is still maybe the fastest running back in the entire team. in the
Right.
entire league. If they had brought back one of either Wilson or Mostert, I'd be much more excited about either
Right.
guy.
Absolutely.
Having all four of these guys back, who they have and in my opinion, Ahmed should be 4, but they don't necessarily treat him like that. They treat Gaskin as the 4. Myles Gaskin, a guy who's a starting running back in fantasy and in real life 2 years ago, is their number 4 and hardly used. Who knows if he's even going to dress on game day half the time.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not excited about their backfield situation from a fantasy standpoint at all.
No.
These are guys that I would be looking to move if you could talk somebody into
If
it.
you
Get
could
somebody
talk
excited, like
somebody
you said.
into believing Wilson is the number one wide
Is a
running
number-
back.
Yep. And is a
Ship
number
him.
2 option in fantasy or something. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, ship him if somebody actually buys that story.
Big time.
But don't call me up because his last name's Wilson. Think I'm going to be looking to make a move because that's not happening.
Other thing that the Miami did, they bring in Mike White. So the everybody's favorite, the backup quarterback, especially in New York. Everybody's favorite backup quarterback is now moving to Miami. This was an interesting one for me because I thought
Hopefully
Skylar
he
Thompson
doesn't
acquitted
see the
himself
field.
well.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
And
A, you
hopefully
hope that he
the
doesn't see the field. But B, I thought Skylar Thompson looked like a legitimate NFL quarterback when he played
He
last
did.
year, especially in the
And
playoffs.
so, he got up to the playoffs.
And he
Whatever
did
else
not.
you
He
could say
just
about it.
in that playoff game, he did not look like the game was too big for him. Now they didn't.
No.
They didn't win.
No, it didn't.
But they made it a game.
That's right.
And I just, like I said, Skylar Thompson showed that he can play quarterback in this league. And I don't think and he's cheap. He's cheap as all hell right now.
Right.
Because he's a rookie contract on a low round guy.
Right.
You don't have to pay your backup quarterback what you paid Mike White.
Yeah, you're not going to have to pay him like you did Andy Dalton.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue addition by subtraction because you took something away from New York, but if New York gets Aaron Rodgers, they didn't care about Mike White anyway.
Right.
So that was a bit of a head scratcher to me. It was one. We'll bring up our head scratcher.
Maybe our friend, the professor, Commissioner Cooper,
right?
might
Maybe
be able
he's
to
got
shed
better
some light.
insight than
I'm
I
the
do on that.
professor. He's the commissioner, so maybe he could shed some light on why they made that particular move.
Right.
Given, like you said, Skylar's down there.
Last move I want to talk about real quick, though, that the Dolphins made and the AFC East in general. This is the last. We'll move on to the North here in a second, but the Dolphins bring in Braxton Berrios. Speaking of ex-Jets, they bring in Braxton Berrios. Braxton Berrios is a classic guy that I would love to have on my real team. Haven't been necessarily as excited about him fantasy-wise, but now they've picked up a guy who can run that slot receiver position for them because they apparently don't want a tight end like Mike Gesicki running out of the slot. Braxton Berrios is a legitimate slot receiver. He was maybe the most consistent guy outside of Garrett Wilson's explosion last year. Braxton Berrios was a very consistent receiver for New York. Plus, he's a return guy, and he's a good return guy. And having a good return guy like that means you don't have to chance Tyreek Hill as a return guy. You can save Tyreek Hill. You can save Tyreek Hill for that game where you have to win it and you're down by 6 and you need a punt return late in the game. Okay, now if you want to try to put Tyreek Hill in to spark something, but you don't have to put Tyreek Hill out there for 4, 5, 6 punt returns a game anymore. You don't even have to think about it because you've got a legitimate return man now.
That's right. You make sure that you keep him locked down on the sideline.
Right.
So that he
especially after
get out there to return.
After he shows he's still got it and wins the sprint championship at the minor league USA track and field event the other day, but he won it going away. I don't know if you saw that tape, but yeah, I mean,
I did not.
Tyreek Hill could still. I mean,
yeah,
not that we didn't
there's
know
no
that anyway,
question
but he
about,
can. The man
about
can
whether
run.
he can or cannot get it going. He can't.
So let's move. AFC North. I said we were going to move on to the AFC North. Not a ton going on in the AFC North.
Not a ton. The Bengals signing offensive linemen.
Yes.
And so that's, of course, that's the whole thing when it comes to him. They can't have him sacked 16 times a game.
No, exactly.
They tried that last season with mixed results, except for when they needed the results.
Right.
They were not there. And so they don't need playmakers, obviously.
No, they've got a ton of playmakers. Now they did lose in sticking with the Bengals. They did lose Samaje Perine, but that's their second string running back. They'll probably bring back, they'll probably keep mixing around. But yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh hasn't done a ton in this division right now in free agency. They've done a lot of defensive moves, which is good because I said it last year all the time. Pittsburgh needed to get back to being a Pittsburgh defense, and they were not.
Defense, right?
Baltimore hasn't done a ton because I think they're waiting to see what happens with Lamar. Listen, if you don't want to wait any longer, just give the man a flipping contract. That's my take on things. But what do I know?
My take on it is if he wants a fully guaranteed deal, it's not going to happen.
You're talking about a dude.
Ago,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But he's been injured the last 2 years, and you cannot sit up there and talk about how I'm the top quarterback on the free agent mark, whatever. If you've been injured and missed significant time the last 2 years, and that's why. And
unfortunately, he doesn't. He has every right to represent himself, and I am all for the idea of guys if they can do it. No, in this situation, it's not helping him because he doesn't have anybody.
It's not helping him. It's not helping Baltimore.
No, he doesn't have that agent in his ear right now telling him, listen, this is what we realistically can expect. This is what we can push for. This is the middle ground, like a house negotiation, right? You never, you don't offer full price. You offer and then they come back and they say, oh, we want more than what you go back and forth. He's got his mom, literally his mom, who loves him more than anybody on the planet because it's his mom and she should.
Well,
good for you.
Yeah.
But he's got his mom in his ear as his main support and his main advisor. And who, of course, your mom's going to say, no, get more, baby, get more. Like you're worth more than that. Well, of course he's worth more than that to your mom, right? Get an agent in there or get somebody in there who at least knows the realism of the landscape. Okay. Deshaun Watson didn't get himself $230 million guaranteed. Yeah, Deshaun Watson's agent got him $230 million.
If you're looking to the Cleveland Browns, right?
As the model for
the model of anything, right? Player movement, contract.
This is not speaking of conversations we don't want to have.
Not going to help your case whatsoever.
You didn't want to talk about Purdue's collapse in the NCAA tournament. Listen, the friggin' Haslams who own the Browns just bought a controllable share of the Milwaukee Bucks, and that's my team. So I don't. Speaking of situations I don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about the Browns and their model for a franchise.
Top team in the Eastern Conference. So yeah, I'd be a little leery.
Yeah, they have been. Yeah, this may be the last hurrah this season before the Haslams get their claws into things. But
no, so, getting back to Baltimore.
Getting back to Baltimore. Lamar has to sign. They have to get him in.
I wear glass. Maybe he needs glasses. All right, put on your glasses and then look and see what the real deal is. Not the rose-covered ones. All right.
No, the bifocal. Get something in that'll help.
That will show you the real landscape. And this is a deal that should have been done a long time ago.
Yeah.
But it's just he's looking for that guaranteed money. He's not going to get it, and he's not going to get any nibbles from another team because then they have to give up 2 first-round picks and a guaranteed deal for its player that's been injured 2 years in a row. Not going to happen. 2 years ago,
there are very few teams who would not love to have Lamar Jackson's talent at quarterback.
Absolutely.
There are very few teams who want to give up 2 first-round picks.
That would love to have him, but they're not going to give him a guaranteed deal, and they're not going to give up 2 first-round picks.
Lamar, somebody's got to blink in that situation and get that done with because obviously Baltimore hasn't done a whole hell of a lot, period, waiting on that situation. And you can't blame them. So Pittsburgh hasn't done much fantasy-wise now we're talking. Pittsburgh hasn't done much. Baltimore hasn't done much. Cincinnati hasn't done much except lose guys other than, and this is the biggest move to talk about with them, but it is relevant. Bringing in Orlando Brown. 4 years, $64 million. Now they already had a left tackle, Jonah Williams, who is apparently now on the trade block. Didn't do great last year, but played better toward the end of the season. But like you said, we're talking about
a lockdown left tackle.
They need to protect Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is the franchise. Joe Burrow is one of the handful of guys who could be Mr. AFC if Patrick Mahomes has a down year.
Yeah, it's
or
amazing what he has accomplished, given the fact that he gets sacked.
He's always
60
on his
times.
ass. Yeah.
Right. And
Playing
so
on 1.5 legs and always on his butt. But and yet, yeah, look at the heights that they've risen to now. Like you said, they've got a ton of playmakers already. This is not a team that had to go out and try to trade for Aaron Rodgers and bring in all the free agent wide receivers and trade for Brandon Cooks and everybody else. This is not a team that had to do that. But bringing in Orlando Brown, trying to solidify that offensive line, and they made moves last year to try to solidify the offensive line.
They did. And like I said, it had some success.
Well, they had success till they had some injury problems too, though. Right.
He didn't get it.
No, that's the best move they could have made, was trying to shore up the offensive line, I believe there. Cleveland, we talked about Cleveland. They haven't done a lot outside of defense. They did bring in Jordan Akins, who has played with Watson in the past. But you're talking about a guy who's going to be a backup.
Over that move.
No. You're talking about the second tight end, at best, the second tight end on the team behind David Njoku, who had a very good year, finally looked like what we thought David Njoku should look like.
Right.
And can only get better as he develops more rapport with Watson.
Right.
And let's not forget that Harrison Bryant in Cleveland has been a good second tight end. This is a guy that won the Mackey Award in college as the best tight end, has been a capable tight end so far in his couple of years in the league here. So you bring in Jordan Akins. I mean, yeah, you're talking about at best a second tight end. Not a lot going on in the AFC North from a fantasy standpoint, and big free agent signings. Likewise, if we want to talk about the AFC South, not a lot going on here. Jacksonville's mostly done some defensive moves, brought some guys in. They made their big splash in free agency last season when they brought in Christian Kirk, and it turned out to be a brilliant move.
It's not a free agency move, but they get the wide receiver who hopefully is not betting on any more football games.
Right. It's like they signed one after they make the Calvin Ridley move last season. He is reinstated. He will be on that team this year. Now you're talking about, you've got Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley as your 1-2. You've talked about Zay Jones, who was a number 2 receiver in every sense of the word.
That's right.
Real life and fantasy wise.
Right.
Now he's your 3.
He might have been 1B wide receiver.
Right. And now he's your 3. And they're going to bring back Evan Ingram, and they've still got Trevor Lawrence. I mean, this and Travis Etienne. This is a team to watch in the South. This is a team to watch in the South, but they haven't made a ton of moves outside of shoring up the defense, but that's what they needed to shore up in the first place.
Since Tennessee is disintegrating before our eyes.
And has not done anything. They've made some offensive line moves. They've made some defensive moves, but there's nothing going on in Tennessee that makes anybody happy.
They've got Henry on the on the
block-ish, maybe. Yeah, we don't. Will he? Won't he? But I mean, the most active team in the AFC South.
24. Yeah.
Right. Most active team in the AFC South has actually been, from free agency wise, and it has been Houston. I've talked about it a couple weeks in a row now, or at least mentioned. They bring in Robert Woods. Not the exciting move it might have been 3 years ago.
Yeah, last year I was kind of like, okay, Robert Woods could do something. And guess what? He didn't.
My biggest thing about bringing in Robert Woods, the thing that I do like about the move, is that whoever they have for a quarterback this season, because it looks like they're going in a different direction, looks like they will not be, at least their first option is not to go with Davis Mills anymore at quarterback. It looks like they want to bring in somebody younger. They did bring in Case Keenum, who returns to Houston, who is not exciting, but is a good, capable backup and has been a good pro quarterback. Right. And there are worse guys to have in that room to teach a young guy than Case
if you're
Keenum.
Houston,
I like Case Keenum.
Who do you hope the Carolina Panthers pick at number 1?
Right.
Because if I'm Houston, I want Stroud.
Mm-hmm. I think if you're Houston, you want Stroud. If you're Carolina, you can't not want Stroud. You'd be fine if they like Richardson,
Stroud, which I suspect they will. Then what does Houston do? Do they bring in the guy who's 5'5" and weigh 160 pounds?
well, I'm not 100. I got 160 beat. I left 160 pounds a long time ago, but 5'5". It's not knock 5'5", but I'm not playing NFL quarterback either, especially at 44. Yeah, I'm leery of Bryce Young, and I don't want to be that guy that falls into that trap of, well, he's too short to play the position. But I don't want to be that guy. I
don't as much anymore, obviously, because the guys like Russell Wilson, but Russell Wilson wasn't 160 pounds.
No. I think if you're Houston, you want either Stroud or Richardson would be my pick.
Yeah, if you want Richardson, maybe you need to trade down, because taking him number 2 overall, that's not a move.
Listen, you want to talk about the McAfee show. He had J.J. Watt on the other day, and J.J. Watt made a good point though about and of course J.J. Watt's a guy now who has been with Houston. Obviously, he's a Houston legend. Right. That's where he made his bones.
Right.
And has played with and knows Kyler Murray now, who there's been a lot of comparisons between Bryce Young and Kyler Murray, which are lazy because, they're the same height. They must be the same player. Not in any way, shape, or form.
No.
Back off. But he said, listen, if you're a pro team, if you think the guy can play football, take him. Don't worry that he's not 6'5". Don't worry about all that. If you think he can play football, take him. Bryce Young did what Bryce Young did in college against the SEC, basically against a ton of other NFL guys. He wasn't pulling this off in the WAC
Georgia
against Fresno State or the Mountain West.
Georgia and LSU and all those guys. So that's a legitimate point as well. But I'm saying I would still rather have Stroud.
Yeah, I'd rather have the prototypical guy or the freak athlete that Richardson looks to be. I'd rather have one of those two guys. You're right. I agree with that too. But having Keenum in the room is good for whomever they take, because I like Case Keenum as a professional quarterback, as someone who you can rely on.
Grandeur.
Right.
Yeah. He knows he's not going to go in there and be, the star quarterback.
And Houston knows, DeMeco Ryans knows, they're not going to come in there and light the world on fire. This is a winnable division, but not for Houston.
Right.
This is not a juggernaut
division. Partly because Houston's in that division.
Right. But they're not going to light the world on fire this year, whoever takes snaps. So you don't have to rush CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, or anybody else that you take.
Right.
Will Levis, you don't have to push that guy to start this year. You can afford to let that dude sit for a year or two because you're not contending anyway. So a guy like Case Keenum, who is capable of playing the position, especially for a team that's in this position, I like that move. They bring in Noah Brown at receiver. Again, not an earth-shattering move, but the big news this morning is they trade Brandon Cooks to Dallas. So Brandon Cooks, once again, who should have a endorsement deal with Mayflower Moving Company by now, most traded dude anywhere, but he'll move north to Dallas for what looks like a 5th round pick this year and on a conditional 6th next year. Not expensive, but so they lose Brandon Cooks. They are resetting the board in Houston.
That's all well and good, but you want to make sure, because you bring in, especially if it's Bryce, and you need to make sure that guy stays upright.
Right. You need to now. Yeah, they still have Brevin Jordan at tight end, who underwhelmed last year. But you want to have somebody for whoever to throw to. And if they do make the decision to push their young guy in, he needs somebody to play with and somebody to throw to. Hopefully, Dameon Pierce can be healthy and look like he looked last year.
Healthy, he looked good.
Yeah.
So your running back position's good shape, probably.
Only other thing we saw in the AFC South before we move on to the West. Only other thing we saw in the AFC South, Indianapolis. First off, they signed Matt Gay to like the best free agent contract a kicker could ever have, which is good. I like Matt Gay's a good kicker anyway, and it's fantasy, and kickers play in fantasy in most formats. Matt Gay moving from what was not a great offense last year, and he still scored points, to now an offense which could be better, but is indoors, and he's not going to have to worry. He's going to be indoors more than half the season. I like that move. They also bring in Gardner Minshew, at
Gardner.
quarterback. Speaking of teams who need a quarterback,
Yeah.
they bring in Gardner
talk
Minshew.
about another guy who should have a deal with the moving van.
Right.
So, yeah. So Gardner Minshew is a guy who moves the needle a little bit more than he probably should.
Almost moves it from a social media standpoint or
Yeah.
like a fan excitement standpoint more than an actual football standpoint.
Right. Either in real or fantasy.
This is a
But
team
if
that
he's
wants
the
a young
starter-
quarterback. Yeah.
If he's the starter, which he's going to be the starter, at least to start the season.
You would think it looks like it
You
right
would-
now.
Yeah. So, if he's out there on your waiver wire in your league, might be a player
Oh, yeah.
you might want to go get.
Oh, he was a guy I listed a couple weeks ago when we were talking about dynasty quarterbacks. He's a guy you want on your roster in
Absolutely.
dynasty. You definitely want this because he's a guy that's going to play. He's a guy that's if he's the starter this year, he's a starter this year. If a guy goes down, he's the kind of backup quarterback that can play the position and will be there solid. You don't necessarily want every second string quarterback in the league, but he's one of those second string quarterbacks that can come in and score you some fantasy points. So I like that move too.
He's a second stringer who looks like the first stringer.
At least right now,
At
where he's
the
at,
beginning.
he does.
So, especially if you're in a 2-quarterback league, that's got value.
So AFC West, we'll move to the AFC West, and then we'll move on. We'll listen to our next spot here, and then we'll move on to the NFC quick. But AFC West, Kansas City hasn't done a ton other than letting Orlando Brown walk and bringing in Jawan Taylor, which is a bit of a head scratcher to me because he's a right tackle that they're bringing in to play left tackle and protect the most important quarterback in the game.
Right.
So
And
good
so,
luck
as we
with all that.
mentioned, left tackle is where you talk about quarterback is number one position, and your left tackle, unless he's a left-handed quarterback.
Unless you got a left,
right?
yeah,
Right. And so the left tackle guy, you can make an argument is the second most important spot on your football team.
Definitely.
And so, so that if you're a right tackle guy playing left tackle,
It's a bit of a head scratcher move for me.
it is.
Chargers haven't done a whole lot. Obviously, there's the Austin Eckler trade request scuttlebutt going around, but they've got, speaking of teams that have playmakers, they've got a bunch of good wide receivers. They've got Gerald Everett. They did bring Donald Parham, the young tight end, back, who is a guy I do like in dynasty formats, but nothing really much going on in Los Angeles yet.
So it'd be interesting to see what happens with their new offensive coordinator out there.
Yes, Kellen Moore, and what's he going to? Yeah,
Moore and
if I'm Austin Eckler, I don't know that I want to be out of town.
5 years older than his quarterback,
right?
So
could probably still be his backup. Which is another move they made. They brought back Easton Stick as their backup in Los Angeles. But
so it'd be interesting to see what happens out there. That's got to be a good thing that the head coach is, letting somebody else run that offense.
Yes, hopefully someone else not making the weird decisions that they've made out there. But Las Vegas and Denver have been the two most active teams out there. Now the Raiders, they bring in, as we mentioned, Jacoby Myers, 3 years, $33 million to be their number 2. He's going to be Jacoby Myers is going to be their number 2 wide receiver now because nobody's supplanting Devontae Adams as a number 1 wide receiver.
No.
And then, as you said, they let Derek Carr walk. They bring in Jimmy Garoppolo. This is another team that maybe wants a young quarterback, but they've got Jimmy Garoppolo. This looks like the classic bridge quarterback situation. We'll see what they do now in the draft, if they draft the young guy or not. But either way, they've got Garoppolo. The contract is 3 years, $67.5 million. It's not a killer quarterback contract. It's not going to eat up the same amount on their salary cap that some other teams do. You know that and that is a giant if with Jimmy Garoppolo, but if he stays healthy, he's a good starting quarterback.
He'll get it done, except for the occasional big turnover that he but he usually does those big turnovers after they've built a lead,
right?
So,
honestly, statistically,
and Waller getting traded out of there,
that hurts. That hurts.
That's I'm not really fully getting.
No,
so
that hurts to me.
Yes.
And especially when you're bringing in Garoppolo, you're bringing in a guy who likes to use that athletic tight end.
And there's 10 legitimate tight ends maybe in the NFL, And Waller, he's going down the slide the other way, but still.
But you had an opportunity for Darren Waller to be Jimmy G's George Kittle,
right,
in Las Vegas, and now you don't.
Yeah, so that I'm not getting it.
And even if they want to bring back Foster Moreau, who is a free agent and actually talked with the Bengals here the other day, Foster Moreau's just a guy. He's just a dude. He's just a guy, and yeah,
he's the guy that we have talked about during the season on the show, and then he goes 6 feet under.
Yeah. This is a team to watch in a relatively deep tight end class. This is a team to watch on draft day, draft weekend, whatever. This is a team to watch for at the tight end position, I think. But yeah, that's their big moves. I don't know. Jacoby Myers, he was a fantasy wide receiver 2. He's probably more like a fantasy wide receiver 3 now to me, with 2 upside ish maybe. But like we said, he's not going to supplant Devontae Adams. He's got to learn how to coexist with Jimmy G.
Maybe he could fight off Renfro. Maybe.
And that's a maybe, because you're talking about a guy in Hunter Renfro who 2 years ago was a top 12 fantasy PPR wide receiver.
That's right.
So, I mean, he's got some skill.
Yeah. We don't need to talk about it.
Maybe they play more 3 wide receiver sets now that they don't have Darren Waller around. Maybe we see a lot of Adams, Myers, and Renfro on the field at the same time, which is fine. But eventually, you've got to use a tight end as well, and they really do not have any. Jesper Horsted, I think, is on there. Yeah, Jesper Horsted. There's a name that'll move the needle for you.
Yeah.
The Broncos, though, this is a team that's been active, but they've been active more so on their offensive line. Bringing in Mike McGlinchey and Ben Powers were their 2 big moves. But we mentioned they bring in Samaje Perine. They already have Latavius Murray. They bring in Samaje Perine. To me,
if you add both of those guys together, you have 1 running back.
You have 1 running back, which they need because Javonte Williams does not look like he's going to be ready for the season.
No.
From everything I've seen and everything I've heard. But then that's a little worrisome. That's a little worrisome because Javonte Williams, we know, is talented. I think the entire fantasy world, I was not as big on him as some people were last year. The entire fantasy world was trying to make Javonte Williams happen. And he doesn't have that track record to warrant that. Does he have the physical skill? Is he fun as all hell to watch when he's healthy and running through dudes? Yeah. But he's always been a running back who shares the carries. He shared carries at North Carolina with Michael Carter. He shared carries his first year or 2 in the league with Melvin Gordon. And we know how that happened. And Melvin Gordon's out of town now, but has a Super Bowl ring to show for it. But Samaje Perine coming in, to me, signals that, maybe Williams is not going to be as healthy as we want him to be this year. To me, it means that I am downgrading Williams in my rankings or where I'm looking at drafting him in redraft. I'm not moving on from him yet in Dynasty unless somebody blows me away.
No, he's way too young to move on from him from Dynasty. But like you're saying, redraft, avoid.
Yeah. All right, let's listen to our second spot here. We'll listen to our friends from Manscaped. Then we'll jump on the NFC and the biggest moves from the NFC here after we get back from break.
We have breaking news. Manscaped now sells beard products. That's right. They are once again revolutionizing men's grooming with the brand new Beard Hedger Pro Kit. From a beard trim to a fresh shave, the technology behind the Beard Hedger Pro Kit allows you to shape your signature beard look. Now you can finally use Manscaped products to make your drapes match your carpet by going to manscaped.com and using the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY for 20% off and free shipping. It's time to tame your mane. No one likes a weird beard, so say goodbye to all your stubble and trouble with Manscaped Pro Beard Kit. It all starts with the Beard Hedger. This thing is a juggernaut of fixing faces. First off, this cordless trimmer has a rotary wheel that gives you 20 hair cutting lengths, all with one guard, so no more messy drawers full of extra add-ons. That's right, face grooming doesn't need to be hard. Get 20 different beard lengths in just one guard. Plus, it's waterproof, so you can shave in the shower to avoid all that hair in the sink. The titanium-coated T-blade is tough on hair but smooth on your face, leading to single-stroke efficiency that brings satisfaction one stroke at a time. So make sure you get 20% off and free shipping when you go to manscaped.com by using the promo code BellyUpFantasy. Once again, that's 20% off and free shipping when you use the promo code BellyUpFantasy at Manscaped.com.
All right. Yeah, get yourself over there to manscaped.com. Use that promo code for Belly Up. You can take care of your beard. You can take care of yourself down below. You can make sure that you look well groomed for date night here.
Yeah. Take care of that nose. You know what I'm talking about?
Honestly, that's one of my favorite parts of the whole package.
It is.
Because we both have the Manscaped products, but yeah, listen. You can go to Walmart or Rite Aid or wherever you want to get and pay $15 for a little throwaway nose trimmer. Or you can go over to Manscaped, use the promo code BellyUp, get yourself the discount there, grab their nose trimmer, and really
have
do
it
some
come right
weed
to your
whacking.
front door.
That's right. Yeah, and it comes right to you. You don't even have to leave the house.
That's right. And going to Walmart, as we all know, is not a funny
no one wants to do that.
No.
Best time for me to go to Walmart from both a usability standpoint and an entertainment standpoint. I love to go to Walmart like after midnight because you're not fighting with the rest of the public. And the public that is there, it's fun to watch. So why not?
Yeah, I've seen some interesting pictures of situations.
So moving on to the NFC, we got to hammer the NFC here and talk about the moves that are happening here. We'll start in the East like we started in the AFC. Dallas hasn't done much from a free agency standpoint. They bring back.
They did move on. They did move on from
They've let Ezekiel Elliott go and they franchise tag Tony Pollard, which is an interesting move.
Right. Because
but I think we all kind of saw that.
It wouldn't be as interesting if Pollard wasn't injured. Because he's obviously the better of the two of them now.
And that's the one interesting angle on the whole thing. Because vacuum, if he doesn't get hurt, if he doesn't get injured in that last game that he played last year, I don't think anybody at this point thinks that Pollard is not the more explosive, more versatile of the two backs.
Right.
Now, Zeke still has something to offer. He still can play that early down hammer roll.
Coming down the stretch, he averaged 2.0 yards per carry. And that's
he's
not
still,
bringing it.
He's still a good
2.0 yards per carry.
Right.
Right.
I just fall forward and you average almost
fall forward, and there's 2 yards right there.
But he still can pass block. He's still a very good pass blocker. He's still a good all-around running back. It's a bad year to be out there on the market for running backs because everybody's out there for running backs. There's a ton of people out there right now.
Right.
And being as advanced in age as he is, and he's not an old man, but he's an old football player.
Because advanced age means you're 30 years old.
Exactly. And with the glut of people out there
Sometimes
on the market
28.
right now at running back, and the fact that he's going to want money because he's made money, it'll be interesting to see where Zeke goes. But I think they made the right choice. I think they made the right choice between Pollard and Zeke.
Too. I do too. Because he wasn't going to renegotiate his deal or whatever, and
I know it hurt Jerry Jones to do that.
Legitimately, yeah. And I know Jerry Jones was all like, "Oh, I'm so sorry to see him go," and practically cried himself a river. But it was the right move.
It was.
So
I'll tell you what, dude. I was going to move on to a Shinerbach for my next one, but you guys can't get this unless you're up in my neck of the woods here in Northwest Wisconsin because it's a local brewing project. But this is vanilla cow I'm having. It's a milk stout.
Good.
Milk stout with milk, sugar, and vanilla. It's a 6.72 ABV.
Wow.
This is strong, but
okay.
This
Although
is a
I will
breakfast
say
beer,
that
man.
I'm a Shiner Box supporter.
Oh,
right? So you know that. So.
I got one in the wings waiting right here.
Okay.
I love it. I love it. But yeah, this is a breakfast beer. I was like, I can grab another one of those, man. I'm going to grab one of these and might have to make this a regular part of the routine.
Next time I'm up in Wisconsin, I'm going to have to look into that.
Brewing Project with a K from Eau Claire, Wisconsin, which is about an hour south of me. But yeah, no, they've done well with the vanilla cow. All right. Anyway, moving on. Dallas hasn't done. We did say this morning they trade for Brandon Cooks, which is nice, pairing him with CeeDee Lamb, and not pairing him, tripling him with CeeDee Lamb and with Michael Gallup there. But otherwise, Dallas hasn't done much.
That's a move they don't make if Michael Gallup shows up at all last year.
Right. Washington's big move appears to be letting Jerick McKinnon go.
and
ish
getting Jacoby Brissett
and bringing in Jacoby Brissett. And I like Jacoby Brissett. I like this
I
move
do
for
too.
Washington.
I do too, but that's not the guy you want. I don't think if you're Washington.
No. They're looking to move on. Sam Howell, as we've heard,
Howell
is QB1, but not the starter.
Right. And that does not speak well of their opinion of him right now.
Right.
So,
But again, here's a team that needs to move on at quarterback. They need to figure it out. They have this young guy, Howell, who played
Right.
okay in very limited time last year, but you don't know what you have in him yet. This is a team that's not going to compete. This is Philadelphia's division. This is Dallas's division. This is New York's division. Any two of those three teams should make the playoffs next year. All three of them could make the playoffs next year. Washington is not competing this year. So find out what you have at quarterback. But if Howell turns out not to be an answer, emphatically so, there are worse guys to have in that room than Jacoby Brissett.
I absolutely agree with you on that, especially if you've got him on your fantasy team.
Yeah.
Then, and you didn't, get rid of him because
they've got guys to throw to.
Starter.
Yeah.
Then you're in good shape.
Yes.
You definitely want to keep him on your fantasy team.
Speaking of professional football players, like I talked about kind of with Case Keenum before in it, I love Jacoby Brissett as a professional at what he does. The man, he understands the situation he's in.
Right. Knowing what was going to happen to him at week 13.
He could not have handled himself better last year.
And he played well.
Yes, he did. He very much did. And he did the same thing 3-4 years ago or whatever in Indianapolis.
That's right.
The man he is a professional. He understands the business of things. He understands his place in that business when you bring him into your organization. And he does what is needed of him. I have a lot of respect for Jacoby Brissett as a professional quarterback, as a player, as a person. And even if Sam Howell does work out, and let's hope he does, that'd be awesome.
Right.
There are worse guys to have in the room.
Fantasy team, you're waiting for him to make a move. So
who better to learn how to be a professional quarterback and prepare week to week and conduct yourself and lead a team than a guy like Jacoby Brissett? So I love that move for Washington, even though it's not a giant needle mover, maybe social media wise, and it didn't get the big headline on Sports Center or whatever. I love that move for them.
Right.
Philadelphia, bring in Marcus Mariota as a backup to Jalen Hurts. Another move that I like. A guy who can play obviously several notches below, but he's similar.
I'm with you on that.
Jalen Hurts.
Right. He's got
this is a guy you don't have to change the offense for. You don't have to change the offense to bring Marcus Mariota.
Past year when he went down for that, what was it?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
When he went down for that 3 games or whatever it was, then
this is always a move.
Not the same quarterback.
This is always a move that I'm shocked that, maybe there's something to be said for the shock factor, almost like in baseball when you're talking about bringing in a reliever. You've had a soft tossing starter for 5 innings, and now you bring in a reliever who throws 103. And it's the shock factor of something you haven't seen before.
Yeah,
maybe there's something to be said for that.
The glove, and you're like, oh crap.
Right. Maybe there's something to be said for that quarterback-wise in the NFL, but in my opinion, if I'm running a franchise, I want a similar style as my backup quarterback so that I don't have to throw the entire playbook out or change things up. I don't want a statue 6'5" immobile, pocket passer quarterback backing up my dynamic Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts type running quarterback, and vice versa.
And we've seen that happen. We've seen it with you mentioned Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Arizona. You've got guys like Philadelphia.
Colt McCoy is not Kyler Murray.
No,
in any stretch of anyone's imagination.
No,
but
that's no fault on him.
No, not at all.
He's not the same kind of quarterback. And so, all of a sudden your guy misses 4 games and you go 1-3 and your season's over.
Big time. But I like bringing in Marcus Mariota. They signed Rashad Penny. They lose Miles Sanders. They bring in Rashad Penny. This is a guy that you've watched, obviously, being a Seahawks fan. This is a guy who's a good running back.
Games, that's a good signing.
He's and therein lies the rub, friends, as my English degree would tell you. Rashad Penny's a good running back.
He is.
If and when he's healthy.
Remember this last year, he was the starter to start the season, and he
Over
kept
Kenneth
the
Walker.
potential NFL, in the running for the rookie of the year,
Yes,
who
the
I
hype.
believe should have won it, on the sideline for the first 6 games. Right.
It was.
That's
I'll
the
tell you
kind
what.
of ability that Rashad Penny had.
If Breece Hall stays healthy, the Breece Hall Kenneth Walker debate for rookie of the year would have been really interesting.
It would have been.
I love Breece Hall, but no, Kenneth Walker looks good. But Rashad Penny was looking good before he got hurt last
And
season.
he was
He's
training
been a
100
good guy.
yards and stuff like that. And earlier in the season, the Seahawks offense was cooking.
Yes, they were.
And who was the running back? That was Rashad Penny.
Yep. And they cooked all the way through till they got off the plane from Germany. But
Right.
wah, wah. But no, Penny can step into that Miles Sanders role. They still have Boston Scott. They still have Kenneth Gainwell. They might be able to use those two to keep Rashad Penny healthy for a while. I like his fit in this offense, though. I think that they've done a good job in replacing Miles Sanders on the way out the door with Penny, even though there's the injury questions. Obviously, you want to hang on to Kenneth Gainwell. You want to handcuff. You might want to handcuff Rashad Penny next year in redraft with Kenneth Gainwell. But I like that move for the Eagles.
I'm with you on that.
yeah.
So, like I said, if he gives you more than 6 games,
Hey,
all
icing
good.
on the cake kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the Giants in the East. The Giants, obviously, they bring the big move. They bring back Daniel Jones. They sign him to the big contract.
I wouldn't have
like
thrown
that.
$40 million his way.
I don't know if I would have
That's
thrown
my
that kind of money, but I'm a Daniel Jones fan. I beat the drum for him all season. You guys all heard that. You all know that.
Yeah.
He is
And
one of the best running quarterbacks in the game, which from a fantasy,
Seeing as how he had no weapons.
right,
or minimal.
had to, but for
Right.
for a fantasy
for
guy,
Barkley,
I
of course.
love a running quarterback, and I love me some Daniel Jones. They franchise, so obviously they will be bringing back Saquon Barkley. They traded, as we said, for Darren Waller, which is a bit of a head scratcher on their end too,
Yeah,
because
'cause they
Daniel
have-
Bellinger.
Daniel
there.
Bellinger is the guy that I liked
I do too.
coming, especially down the stretch. He's a guy that I have on my taxi squad,
Yeah,
but and I was looking to possibly bring him off the taxi squad, but now that they've
and
got
he
Waller,
may have to sit there.
he may have to sit there.
But from a football standpoint, and this will speak more to Daniel Jones' value than maybe their value, but for a team that we've all talked about needing receiving help, now they can go into some 2 receiver sets, and they've got Daniel Jones and Darren Waller, or they've got Bellinger and Waller to choose from for Jones, and that's not bad options. That's not a bad thing. I
That's
like
right,
the
'cause
I
they can
like
play
the
2
idea.
tight end offense, and
It makes me sad as a
Yeah,
guy who's got
it's
some
not like they've
Bellinger,
got the bangers at wide receiver.
as a guy who has some Bellinger shares in Dynasty, several, in fact. Yeah, it bums me out that way, but I've also got Darren Waller on 1 or 2 of those teams too. So I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I've got him in 2 dynasty leagues on my side of the fence.
Right.
So
They also bring
like I
in
said, I
Paris
was looking
Campbell.
to-
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do any
I'm not-
handstands over
I'm
that.
not jumping about that, but they bring back Darius Slayton, who was their most consistent receiver last year. They
Yeah.
bring back Isaiah Hodgins, who had a kind of a breakout for them.
Yeah, kind of.
And they bring back Sterling Shepard, who is the longest tenured Giant, got injured,
Yeah.
was looking good until he got injured last year. So it's
About
still
the time I
not
was ready to bring him on my team. Then what happened?
No. Fantasy wise, I'm not excited about any of those guys. But outside of the idea that they are familiar with Jones, and Daniel Jones can put together usable fantasy days, even with that crew. I would
Right.
love to see them make a bigger splash. At some point, they should get Wan'Dale Robinson back healthy. It's not a receiver crew that's going to move anybody's needle. This is a bottom third of the league type receiver
Right.
room.
Right, but you
But-
need bottom of third wide receivers on your team.
Yeah, right.
You can't have
just-
all
No.
wide receiver ones on your team.
It's just
so-
you would like to have 1 or 2 guys who could be a 1 or a 2, and I don't see anybody on this that's more than a 2B-ish type.
Right.
But they've got guys, they've brought guys back. Looking at the NFC North, obviously my Packers haven't done anything because they're waiting on the Rodgers situation. They do bring back all-pro returner Keyshawn Nixon, but I mean, great. Detroit brings in David Montgomery from Chicago to kind of take the Jamal Williams place. As Jamal Williams, they let Jamal Williams walk. They let him move on, the guy that led the league in rushing touchdowns last year. I would like this move a lot more if DeAndre Swift wasn't a thing, but DeAndre Swift is a thing.
Right.
And so they're not going to throw the ball to Montgomery.
Then he would, the guy you just talked about that led, touchdowns
right.
would not have been asked to, turn in his playbook.
Right. It sucks because will Montgomery be their short? He'll be their short down back. He'll probably move into that Williams-ish role. They also brought back Craig Reynolds, which is kind of cool. If you watched Hard Knocks last year, Craig Reynolds kind of a fan darling. But DeAndre Swift, it means DeAndre Swift will not get anything more rushing wise, and it means that they're not going to throw anything to David Montgomery as much as he could have gotten. So. Right. In essence, it doesn't really help anybody's fantasy stock all that much, in my opinion. David Montgomery goes from being the unquestioned dude in Chicago, despite the presence of Khalil Herbert, to being,
I still like
hopefully a goal line guy. So I'm not a great thing from a fantasy standpoint. Minnesota brings back Alexander Madison, which would be a lot cooler if they would move on from Dalvin Cook, but they haven't done that yet.
No, they haven't done that, and it doesn't look like they're going to do that anytime soon. So, Madison remains just the guy who you draft, and
he's a handcuff.
He's a handcuff guy, and looks like that's all we know.
Now, if Cook moves on, Madison is a guy who is at worst a running back too in fantasy.
Absolutely,
but you're talking about ifs and buts and candies and nuts and all that.
Right.
So they do move on from Adam Thielen, Adam Thielen, but
that was
does that necessarily
that needed to be made?
And it's a move that needed to be made, but does it do anything for KJ Osborne?
Kind of does have to, doesn't it?
I don't know, because they brought in TJ Hawkinson. So now they've got another option to throw the ball to. They don't have to throw the ball to whoever's their number two. And we saw that happen last year. They don't have to throw the ball to whoever's their number two wide receiver because they have TJ Hawkinson now.
Right. He'll get a few more catches. He almost has to, because those.
I'm still in shock at how seamlessly he fit into that team last year.
Yes. And so
he looked like he'd been there the whole year.
Thielen is out there.
Expendable,
he's checking to see which way the wind blows and
interviewing with Carolina.
So he went from a number 1B wide receiver to off the team, almost record pace,
to maybe hoping to be a safety blanket for a rookie in maybe Carolina. Chicago, though, has been very active. As a Packer fan, I am not happy about what's going on in Chicago, and as a Chicago Bear fan, you got to be thrilled.
Yeah, I was shocked that they made that move with the first pick of the draft as quickly as they did, but you got to like it.
They bring in Deontay Foreman to replace Montgomery.
Yeah, you got DJ Moore.
They bring in DJ Moore,
and
so now you have a number one wide receiver and Darnell Mooney still.
Right.
And maybe if Chase Claypool becomes what Chase Claypool looked like he was going to be, his rookie year, there's some actual talent.
I like that they didn't move on at quarterback.
No, I agree.
Because if
I like Justin Fields,
quarterback number one, that would have not.
I mean, we're fantasy dudes, so we love the fact that Justin Fields can sprint from Chicago to Detroit and get all those yards for us in a game. But watching how the man led the team this year and what kind of a leader, what kind of accountability he took on himself for their 3 wins. He looks like a leader, and he hopefully.
Right.
I don't know.
And
I don't know if hopefully is a strong word.
Does not mean you're a leader.
No, but he looks like one.
And he does Looked
And
like a leader.
he looks like he might be the guy to change the narrative around
he's
the
young,
Ohio State quarterback.
and so young, and he's got the wide receivers now, and he's got.
And we know they've got talent at running back with Deontay Foreman, who they bring
talent
in,
at running back,
and
they've
Khalil
got talent
Herbert
at tight end.
Yeah.
So with Cole Kmet over there, and
speaking of tight end, they bring in Robert Tonyan from Green Bay.
Well,
now this is a move that I know it's an offense that wants to use two tight ends, and that's great. I get that. Cole Kmet is your tight end, and he's good, and he's young, and he's going to grow with Fields. As a guy who watched Robert Tonyan in Green Bay, as a guy fantasy-wise who studied and looked at how Robert Tonyan scored his points fantasy-wise, Robert Tonyan's biggest ability, his best attribute as a professional football player, was his ability to become friends with Aaron Rodgers. He doesn't offer anything special in the way of hands, in the way of getting open, in the way of blocking, in the way of running speed up the seam or anything. He's a tight end in the National Football League. More power to him. He's better at what he does than I am at what I do, apparently. But his biggest asset as an athlete and as a pro football player was his ability to be friends with Aaron Rodgers. His entire worth, fantasy-wise, his entire worth is wrapped up in red zone looks and catching passes in the red zone. They already have Cole Kmet to do that. They already have Darnell Mooney to do that. They already have Chase Claypool to do that. They do not need that.
Beyond that, they've got Fields to run the ball in himself.
Right. So I am all the way out now on Robert Tonyan.
Don't look for Robert Tonyan on any team. Wilson's out there anywhere.
Yeah, and I don't know how he regains any sort of
he's not doing
relevancy.
It on Chicago Bears.
Because even if Kmet gets hurt, I just said they've already got Claypool for a red zone target and Mooney, who they like to use down there. And like you said, they've got Justin Fields, who can run it in from the 25. They may not even be in the red zone.
Right.
So I'm all the way out on Robert Tonyan from a fantasy standpoint, not as a football player. Guy I would like to have on my football team and did for a while, not somebody I want in fantasy. Outside of that, though, like we said, Chicago making moves. They bring in Deontay Foreman. I think he steps right into that Montgomery role, which means that Khalil Herbert will not ascend to what I think we all, and I was one of the big proponents of this, I don't think Khalil Herbert becomes any kind of fantasy star. I think if one of those guys is hurt, the other one's value goes way up.
He's a serviceable running back.
No, keep him on your roster. He's a very good running back. It's just he's not going to be the unquestioned number one that he was before they signed Deontay Foreman. So NFC South real quick. Atlanta. They've done a lot with defense. They bring in Taylor Heineke.
What do we think of Desmond Ridder now?
That's the entire question around their entire team. If they think that, and Desmond Ridder didn't acquit himself terribly last year in limited couple games, and they were willing to bench Marcus Mariota, who was not killing that team, and fantasy wise was actually a usable piece.
He was on my fantasy team, and he was a serviceable number 2 quarterback.
He was a guy you could use last year.
Yeah.
I like Taylor Heineke coming in because it gives them somebody who's a veteran option who can start.
He's veteran. He's started with some success, and so So
I think
Desmond
they need
Ridder,
to
if
give
they were
Ridder.
all in on Desmond Ridder, do they make that move?
I don't know if they do. I think they need to give him as much space as possible because they've got a good running game with Algier down there. They've got Pitts. They've got Drake London.
Well, the whole situation would be a whole lot better if Pitts could be found on game day.
And that's a play calling thing. That's not a talent thing from any stretch of the imagination.
No.
They have to figure out a way to scheme that guy.
If you're paying, a coach $1 million, you think, or whatever it is, you'd think that they could figure out a way to get this guy involved
how you
more in your
cannot, why you would choose to throw the ball to Olamide Zaccheaus, who I'm sure is a wonderful human being and his mother loves him.
right.
Why you would throw the ball to him more than Kyle Pitts blows me away. Why
Yeah,
did you spend the number 4 pick in the
whole
draft
2
on a
years
tight end
that
if you
he's
weren't going
been
to
in
use him?
Atlanta is as
No.
big a mystery as probably anything out there. And I'm glad
Right.
I've not, given any, of my either in dynasty or redraft. I have not given any of my assets over
No.
to Pitts.
No, not yet. The jury is way still out on him about whether he's going to be a usable fantasy option going
right.
forward.
And what they say you need to invest in him to get him on your team is way, way too high.
Now
Probably
there
still.
have been some big moves in the South here now. I mean, obviously now New Orleans brought in Drew Carr at quarterback. They brought in Jamal Williams at running back, which I think is a underrated move because we don't know what's going to happen with Alvin Kamara and his legal situation.
Right. Which is something that they battled, over, remember a year ago, we were talking about this exact same thing.
And it looks much more likely that his situation, his availability will be affected this year. Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
It looks much more likely that his availability this year will be in jeopardy than it was last year when they admitted all along this was a long-term legal thing that wasn't going to play out for a while. Now there's actually been movement on that front, and there is legal jeopardy for him. And legal jeopardy means that you have NFL jeopardy, especially in Roger Goodell's world.
Absolutely. Heck, it means more than
Right.
NFL jeopardy because you don't even need legal jeopardy to get hammered in the NFL.
So I like the Jamal Williams move down there because Jamal Williams is from a fantasy standpoint, if Jamal Williams is the guy on the team, he is a guy in fantasy. We saw it last year in Detroit. We saw it in Green Bay when he was a good starter. Every time Aaron Jones had to miss, Jamal Williams stepped right into that same role and could handle it, receiving wise and rushing wise. And that's a big deal in New Orleans when you're talking about a guy who could possibly be taking the Alvin Kamara role. They did restructure some things and they kept Michael Thomas, which, we don't know what we still have in him. But if Michael Thomas is on the field and can draw any coverage away from your guy, Chris Olave, and from Rashid Shaheed, I am all for that.
Yeah. So, Chris Olave, was a big time player, considering he had the red rifle or whatever thrown to him.
Yeah.
And so now that he's got a legitimate quarterback back there, Chris Olave is a player.
Right.
I was big on him, as you know.
I like the Drew Carr move
more
for Olave than I do for Carr.
Right. And so I can safely say that he's the only wide receiver that I would be having on Team Wilson. Because Thomas,
I think you're going to have to pay too much to get Thomas. It's not that I don't want the flyer on Michael Thomas.
Absolutely.
It's that I don't want to have to pay the price I'm going to have to pay to get Michael Thomas.
It's going to be higher than a flyer. That's the problem with that.
I would,
People are still trying to pay for his name.
If I could get Michael Thomas, where I know I will be able to get Rashid Shaheed, I would jump on it. I like Rashid Shaheed. Here's a guy who every time he touches the ball has a chance to take it the distance. He's one of the quickest and most explosive guys, looks like, in the entire league. They just have to be able to get in the ball more. They're not going to do that, I don't think, as long as there's the Michael Thomas cloud hanging over him. If I could get Michael Thomas where I know I can get Rashid Shaheed, I would jump all over that for a flyer, because you've got a chance to get a guy who could be who seemed to be the number
he
one.
Can get you 1,500 yards of offense at the wide receiver position, but as you've mentioned, someone is going to take Michael Thomas.
Somebody's going to jump on his ass in the 6th round when they shouldn't.
No. If you're talking, 11, 12 rounds, something like that, and he's sitting there, that
I might be willing to
it's probably going to get cut off your team at some point during the season anyway.
I would love to have Michael Thomas as my 4th wide receiver on a team.
That would be huge. But I can't imagine in any scenario where that will happen.
He's just as likely to be he's just as likely to be the 6th wide receiver on your team as he is to be the 2nd or 1st wide receiver on your team.
Right.
In fact, maybe even more so. But there's still that we know what he has been
Right, because last
if
year
he can be healthy.
I'm surprised that New Orleans brought him back because he pretty much we all recognize that he just was like, well, it's all about me.
He's
so
an
I'm not gonna
attitude.
play.
He's definitely an attitude guy. He is the prototypical in the league right now. He's the prototypical diva wide receiver, and it's unfortunate because, come on, dude.
Yeah, for someone that has not produced for 2 years, you need to leave the diva side,
Right.
in the ditch.
Now, Tampa Bay's big move was bringing in Baker Mayfield. Again, that's a move. That's a move I like. I like that
it
move.
as well, and he's got about as much negative press as about anybody could possibly get, but
and kind of
he
deservedly
is
so.
a legitimate starting quarterback.
I love what he did in Los Angeles last year. I think
do too. He went over there and the Rams were injury
proved to everybody
he's
a pro quarterback. He's a pro quarterback.
He
can be.
He can be, and he has been.
He looked like he reined his ego in a little bit.
Cleveland Browns were in the postseason.
Right.
How many other
Cleveland Browns won a freaking game at least.
Bernie Kosar?
Yeah, they won games.
Playoffs and Cleveland in the same setting.
They were 3 plays away from knocking the Chiefs out of the playoffs.
Right. And so Carolina, but he went to LA and
I love what he did with the Rams.
I do too. And so he's got weapons in Tampa, obviously, and especially at receiver.
Yeah.
And Leonard Fournette is no longer there, but
they did bring in Chase Edmonds, and I mentioned on Twitter last week that Chase Edmonds, I think we've seen the last of him as a starter in this league. I don't think he supplants either Keyshawn Vaughn. I don't think that he or Rachaad White. I don't think he moves ahead of either of them. I think White is your starter. I think Vaughn is your backup. I think Edmonds is veteran insurance. He may or may not even honestly make the opening day roster. But between Mayfield and Trask, whoever wins that job, and I think it should be Mayfield, but maybe they like the 24-year-old and Kyle Trask. Whoever wins that job is a quarterback 2, but with a lot of weapons to throw to.
So a lot of weapons. A lot of Evans, guys like that. And so, yes. And
we talked about Carolina a little bit. We mentioned Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders signed with Carolina. I like that move for them. This is a team that's not screwing around. They make that move to jump up to the number 1 pick. Whoever is going to be their quarterback, they are taking the steps to surround that guy with some talent and to try. They sign Hayden Hurst at tight end, who's the best tight end they've had there since Greg Olson's glory days, in my opinion.
That's a few days ago.
They bring in Andy Dalton as a veteran presence in that room. And again, there are a lot of guys in this league that can play backup quarterback. Andy Dalton is a guy who I think has a lot to teach a young quarterback about how to be a professional, how to lead a team, how to be a professional NFL quarterback. I like that move, having a guy like Andy Dalton in that quarterback room behind whoever they take as their number 1 pick, whether it's Young, Stroud, Richardson, whoever. I like having a guy like Andy Dalton behind him as insurance for on-field purposes, but for mentorship and learning wise, and what he has to offer and teach whoever they take is with that number 1 pick.
I'm with you on that. So
yeah,
Carolina.
Andy Dalton is not an exciting quarterback. Hasn't been an exciting quarterback for all but maybe 1 or 2 seasons.
For 5 years now,
right?
Or so. And but backups.
But the value of that move
is fine.
Yes.
As you mentioned, Sanders. Okay. And they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do without DJ Moore now.
We thought Dalton was a backup
on more than one occasion.
Yes, he did. We thought Dalton was a backup last year. We thought it was Jameis Winston's job, and Andy Dalton ended up being the guy there. Andy Dalton still has stuff to offer in this league beyond just being an old man teacher. But the value of this move for a team like Carolina, I think we haven't even seen it yet, obviously, because we don't know who they're going to draft. But I really like that move from their standpoint. And then finally, we move on to the NFC West. Not a ton going on out west in terms of fun moves. We've got the Seahawks re-signing and bringing back Geno Smith, which I really like. Seahawks have reworked their D-line a little bit.
Had to make,
yes,
even though they've got the number 5 pick.
No.
In the draft.
I think you can move that.
You've got all kinds of which way are you going to turn.
They got possible. They can trade out of that pick. They can trade down.
Trade out of it, which
they
I don't
can
think
grab
they will.
somebody.
They could, and the early projections is another Wilson, Texas Tech.
There you go.
It's fixing to might be their pick, and that's interesting to me because Texas Tech is known for their offense, not defense.
Right, but
and so to have a guy go at the number 5 potentially and be a defensive player,
would be a big deal. Now they can move out of that pick. They could move down if they so choose, especially depending on how the quarterback thing shakes out in front of them.
Their own pick later on in the draft. So
exactly.
Trading down, they don't really need to do that. I don't think.
And they don't have to. They don't have to bail on that pick. They could, but depending on how the quarterback thing shakes out in picks 1 through 4, they could find themselves in a real cool spot.
3 of them off the board in the first 4 picks.
But if someone pulls a weird move and doesn't take that quarterback in the top 4 picks,
then we've got a discussion.
Holy cow! Now you can command a giant price for that 5.
I've heard about Richardson possibly being picked at the number 5
He could still be
pick.
there. Now they could still choose to take that guy because the Smith contract is not prohibitive.
No, it isn't.
They could still take a guy, and Geno can be a bridge type quarterback. And again, speaking of professionals, that'd be a great opportunity for a guy to sit behind someone for 2 years, learn the position, learn the daily life of the NFL, and then step in. And I don't think Geno has any illusions about who and what he is right now. I love that he had his year.
Right. He had a big season. You need to have another one.
Right.
Right. But you're not Patrick Mahomes.
I think that they are re-signing Geno and having that number 5 pick from Denver. They are sitting in the catbird seat right now.
Well, you talk about Seattle. Everybody, even me, was like, "Oh, the end of Russell Wilson, era."
Right.
Because I've got more than one Wilson jersey in my my closet, and so that would be even great if they could go out and get another Wilson. I highly support that.
Hey, right. Just keep adding to the wardrobe.
And what's really exciting is during the Belly Up Sports coverage of the draft, I'm going to be commenting on the 1st through 5th picks.
So you might have an opportunity to actually talk about your own team
and give immediate analysis of what I think of whatever it is that they wind up doing.
I'll be on for picks 16 through 20, and so I'm coming in right after the Packers are scheduled to pick. Now, whether they end up picking there or not, we'll see. But yeah, I'm scheduled to be right after my team. But yeah, that'll be fun. Not a whole lot going on in the rest of the division. Obviously, Arizona's done mostly some offensive line and defensive stuff. They're waiting to see on Kyler Murray's health. They're waiting to make a decision on whether they're going to trade D-Hop or not.
Yeah, they're a team that has a lot of question marks.
The Rams, another team with a ton of question marks. They need money. They don't have any money to sign anybody. They traded away Jalen Ramsey.
They don't have the draft picks now either.
But because the F them picks.
They mortgaged their future for the Super Bowl, which they probably do 1,000 times over.
It worked. I would take it at this point too. As much as I love seeing the Packers be competitive every single season, I've tasted that Super Bowl a couple times. I would really like to taste another one. And I mean, if the season's going to end short of the Super Bowl anyway, what's the difference if it ends short before week 18 right? So, but the only other move of significance that I see in the West is a little bit of a head scratcher. The 49ers bringing in Sam Darnold.
Yeah,
and
that was
makes me wonder what the hell's going on there with.
That was interesting because they could have had Jimmy G back,
right?
If they wanted to, probably would have taken.
But who the hell is their starter?
Right, you've got 17 quarterbacks all injured over there, and You know, you
If
got the guy
Purdy
that you took, you know, in the first round.
that you traded up for, you gave away
You
your
traded
future
up
for.
to get injured. Then you've got the guy who you took at the very end of
Dead
the
ass
draft,
last and
right?
turned out to
that
be a guy.
came out
Yeah.
and blew the doors off the place, injured.
If Lance and if Purdy are both healthy, I don't think they know
They have no idea right
who
now.
they
And-
want to start.
And the good news is that they don't have to know.
But I think bringing in
And-
Sam Darnold means they don't know who
That's right.
or if or
They
which
don't
is going to be healthy.
know at this point
Yeah.
if either of them will be healthy. So that'll
And
be
there-
interesting
listen,
to see. You're going to have to keep your eyes on the San Francisco.
There may not be
and
a deeper
Maybe Justin can be our pipeline. You know,
Mr. Herrera.
yeah.
There may not
so-
be a deeper roster in the league than
Right.
San
And
Francisco.
they've shown that because I thought they were the most dangerous team in the playoffs a year
Right.
ago. I know they didn't win it, but as far as
But the problem is, we've talked about it's the most important position
That's
in
right.
football, and we don't know right
And-
now. If
that's
you have
right.
to start
If
the
both
season
of them
even with
were
that
healthy,
roster,
if both of them were healthy, then you've got a great
you
situation.
got first world problems. But I don't think either of them are. And if you have to start that season, even with their roster, if you have to start that season with Sam Darnold as
Well,
your starter, you are.
Yikes.
Listen, they're lucky that they're in a division with Arizona and Los Angeles right now, which is something you wouldn't have said 2 years ago.
No, because you
But they're
thought that was
lucky right
one of
now.
the strongest divisions in football.
Right. They're lucky right now that if they have to go into the season with Sam Darnold as their starter, they're lucky that their main competition is Geno Smith in Seattle right now. They're
Right.
lucky.
And so, you know, we've seen it 10 wins, 9 wins, get
Right.
you in the playoffs.
Right. So we'll see how they can, if they can survive a month or so with Sam Darnold as a starter until they get either Purdy or Lance back.
Well, like
and
I
we
said,
say that, but
yikes.
then we don't know what they have in Trey Lance.
No,
We haven't seen
absolutely have
enough out
no
of him yet.
idea. They have no idea.
Yeah.
He's
We
thrown
know we
like
have-
8 passes.
We know Brock
2
Purdy
years.
is 2 touchdowns a game.
That's right.
We don't know what Trey Lance is.
That's right.
So that'll be one to watch, everybody. I'm not downgrading anybody on the San Francisco team.
No, it's too early for that.
No, but I'm definitely not in redraft
Upgrading.
anyway. I'm not looking at
That's
their
right.
quarterback position for any money. All right. You know what? It's been a long show. Let's wrap this up. Let's talk about Kevin. What do you got coming up here over at
Well, as
BellyUpSports.com?
you are well aware,
Yeah.
tonight at 7 p.m. Central is the live fantasy draft for us belly uppers, for lack of a better. We will be live at 7 o'clock. We'll be having a live, as I mentioned, draft. So if you are in fantasy baseball or looking to get into fantasy baseball and you want to see how things, because the season is still 10 days away or whatever, however many days it is. So a lot of people are going to be doing their drafts next week, probably next weekend.
Yeah.
So if you want to see what a draft, what you might expect
What the pros are
going
going
into the draft, you definitely going to want to check it out tonight at 7 at Central, as I mentioned. And you definitely want to get over to the Belly Up Fantasy website. There is a ton of content over there, especially for fantasy baseball. I've gone crazy with it. And all of a sudden, you know, Vince, our esteemed colleague over there,
Hey,
he's
Vince
producing
can
articles
write.
every
Yeah.
other day now.
Yeah.
And you got Ian over there.
Ian
He's
Lemersall is, yep.
a young guy who just joined up on Belly Up, and he's got articles coming out talking about guys I would have not have thought about as far as fantasy baseball is concerned. So definitely get over to the Belly Up Fantasy website if you're into any fantasy sports, because you know basketball and football and fantasy are both in the playoffs right now.
There's still stuff going on. Yep.
Okay. So if you're into any of that stuff, and obviously you are because you're here, you want to get
Right.
over to the Belly Up Fantasy website, check out what's going on over there. Then once you're done with that, for real sports, go up to the Belly Up Sports site, and there's stuff over there. So things are cracking on Belly
So
Up.
listen,
right
go easy on me tonight because this is my first fantasy baseball draft ever.
now. I'm really interested.
I
to
thought I
see
knew-
what kind of philosophy you bring to this
I
draft.
thought I knew baseball. I love baseball. Some of my best memories, with my dad growing up or talking about baseball and going back, and we would pick our all-time lineups of, who we wanted at each position. I love baseball. I thought I knew baseball, and then I started looking at it fantasy. I'm like, I have no idea who some of these guys are. How do I know?
So remind us what pick you have.
I'm at number 6. I'm kind of in.
So you're right before me. I'm
And-
number 7.
and we're
so
right on the
I'm looking
line.
What you do is going to pivot my draft one way or
Right,
the other.
and we're right on that line between kind of the can't miss hit prospect guys, and
Right.
do we start to take a starter, a pitcher? At least from what I've looked at.
I'm sure I've done some mock drafts, and that number 7 pick has been, different as many times.
Everywhere, it's all over the board.
Yes.
And
So-
and drafting with a bunch of pro, I feel like a rookie because I am a rookie at this. I've never done it before, but I'll be on for rounds 8 through 9 tonight too. So I'll be on there with you. We're only getting started today, you and I.
That's right.
But,
Like
tune
I
into
said,
that
at
tonight.
7 o'clock, it goes live.
Excellent.
The draft will be on the clock at 7 o'clock with the first pick. And I had the first pick a year ago. And of course, that was a certain pitcher and outfielder from the Los Angeles Angels. And if you have the first pick, that needs to be your first pick. So we'll see if he listens to that advice or not.
He's so usable. Yeah, I mean, when he's got eligibility across the board.
He had 300 more points than anyone else in fantasy baseball a year ago. We're talking Aaron Judge.
Well, and we're playing head-to-head points too. We're not playing categories.
Right.
So we're in head-to-head.
So I like that because you're going head-to-head with people.
You can get 2 starts a week out of him from a pitching standpoint. You can get all the hits and home runs during the week
from
him.
In your lineup 6 days a week.
Right.
5 days.
Right.
So it's going to be real interesting to see what's happening. So you definitely want to be there at 7 o'clock tonight.
Tune in, check us all out. See us tonight. We'll see you there. Otherwise, hey, until next week, we hope you guys all. Hey, we know people will be having baseball drafts, but your dynasty leagues are still in full swing. Should be in full swing right now. You should be working trade wires.
I'm in 2 dynasty leagues, and they both got renewed this past week. And I already had to make some difficult decisions because I had guys on IL or IR or whatever the heck you call that I had to
look and
I
are you
had
going
to
to cut them
move
loose or are you going to keep
way
them?
or another. And I have Jordan Love on my taxi squad that I had to move onto my.
You got it. Now you have to have him. He's a starter. You got to have him now.
Yeah. So this couldn't come at a better time. Aaron Rodgers moving up.
All right. We will see. Yeah. For everybody who tunes into the Sports Stove tonight, we will see you then for the draft.
Right.
Otherwise, we will see you back here next week. Same bad time, same bad channel. Head on over to bellyupfantasysports.com. Check all of our stuff out there. But until then, Slanjava, everybody.